You should have seen it down in the valley. I worked down there. Yeah, I went down there.
How do you get the state away from
We had some hail Michael, how'd you do up at your place?
In Fairfield was bad. It was real bad. My girlfriend was there. The whole town was like shut down. They closed school already for the week. The rest of the week. I've never seen anything like that. Her neighbor around her house got pretty bad, but the center of town, I mean, there's people. My uncle's stranded in this development. Can't get out. Can't get in or get out.
Tornadoes reported?
No, I just watched the news before I came back.
They said it was a microburst.
Yeah, microburst.
I thought they said on the Oxford.
I've never seen anything like it.
I remember July 10th, 1979, like it happened yesterday.
It's scary what how quick. And correct, a friend of mine from Sherman. Right through the
You'll see. Alright, we're getting on, we're gonna be. Alright, calling the board meeting to order at 7 o'clock. And first, yes, I know. Hold on a second. And under new business, I need to add item E, waiver of a tuition request.
Can you add an item F for me too?
I don't know, hey, one at a time. You do a little dog and pony for it?
So, do we have a motion?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay. And I need a motion to add item F, Litchfield Center School Principal posting.
Second.
All in favor? And then I need to add a letter B to executive session. Frank didn't want to go home tonight anyhow. Pending claims and litigation, docket number FIC 2018-0174.
So moved.
Thank you.
David wants.
It's all pending claims.
Yeah.
Pardon?
David wants an agenda item added.
Have I covered it? So, pending claims, I got a first, a second vote.
Aye.
Against? Okay. David, do you need something on the agenda? Or is
Can you
your-
talk about it when I take the roof?
You can talk about it in your update.
I'll just talk about it now.
Okay, so that's it. So, first order of business, I need a motion to approve the minutes from May 2nd. Thank you. Discussion,
Something's going wrong with the printer on mine because,
the pagination is
Yeah.
on. Yeah, all the way through. Okay. Pagination.
Pagination.
Oh my God, it's
The pages ain't lined up.
recording you. All right, anyone else have corrections? Okay. First page, 3710, I do not make motions, I invite motions. So somebody made a first motion. there. Can we put a name in there, please, if anyone recalls?
When was
It was probably Frank.
Mine was me. All right, with me.
And the other thing, which is very small, under policy on page 3717, it gets a colon, not a semicolon.
You said that?
On page 3717, it says policy, and that has a semicolon, it should be a colon. And policy.
Yes.
All right, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Carries. I need a motion to approve invoices.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. All right, there being none, all in favor? Opposed? Frank?
I abstain.
Thank you. STPC. PTO. Student Council. Prevention Council. Education Foundation. Oh, we will get to it tonight. Other public comment.
You have that right there.
All right, Ms. Tenney.
Yes, that everybody fared well in the storm. Kudos to Stephanie for being at Stop and Shop on Saturday. I saw her. I was really impressed. But yeah, I wanted to, I'm coming to you tonight to talk a little bit of laptops for teachers. So I heard yesterday from a teacher, and I want to say first off, it happened in a very casual conversation. It was not a person with an agenda, and it really was just very casual. And a teacher mentioned, just like, oh, I'm sort of bummed that if they're taking away laptops, and if I want one, I'm going to have to buy a new laptop this summer. Because they're putting desktops in the classrooms. And I was here about a month ago, and I remember the discussion about primary devices versus secondary devices. And I totally agreed with the idea of teachers do not need 2 devices. It seems like a waste of money. I walked away with a different perception. I think I misinterpreted. I walked away with the perception that teachers would only have 1 device, whether it be a desktop or a laptop, based on what the needs were. I guess because I'm in a district where we have laptops as the primary device. So I wasn't equating primary device with desktop, secondary with laptop. So, so I just wanted to call Dave because I kind of said, oh, I think I heard something else, but let me call Dave to see, if I heard something different. And we had a great discussion, and I really do want to thank, he spoke to me probably like 20 minutes, took 20 minutes of his time. Really appreciated his perspective, and we talked about the hard work that they're doing on the technology plan. And also, I empathize with the hard decision making that goes along with the 0% budget or close to it. So when faced with those decisions of losing personnel versus saving money on technology, I totally get the perspective that we want to save jobs and try to cut back in technology. But as a community member who really values our schools and our schools being innovative, also an educator, in a district, and I have to say, I'm very lucky, I guess, in the district. We have laptops as our primary devices. So I have some serious concerns about moving backwards and using desktops as primary devices because from what I see around the state and looking at other districts, districts are really moving toward using laptops and mobile devices as their primary devices. They're actually moving away from desktops because desktops are limited. You're tethered to the desktop. So I'd really just like the administration and Board of Ed just to listen to my thoughts, I guess, on what I consider the implications of taking away teacher laptops on instruction and really thinking through the lens of instruction. First, I think any teacher who's a teacher, any administrator who's been a teacher will tell you that a teacher's job is not solely in one classroom. Even within the school day, teachers are in different classrooms, they're in professional learning communities, they're working together on things. So, in my experience, these laptops are really integral to that type of work. You know, so curriculum work, you invested in Atlas to house your curriculum, but that's a computer-based program that when you're sitting working collaboratively on curriculum, it's you and me sitting together with our laptops looking at the curriculum, attaching documents. So now what happens when teachers don't have laptops? And it's not just, oh, they can borrow one for this meeting, because this is happening all the time. In data team meetings, teachers are on their laptops, at least in my school. I can't say I've been in Litchfield schools, right? But we're bringing up our student data. We're looking at the student data. We are, we're just doing so much work on these laptops. Our evaluations are all on that. So in my evaluation, I'm sitting across from the teacher. I evaluate with their laptops. I have their evaluation. It would really be very uncomfortable if I had my laptop and access and the teacher sitting across from me didn't have access to their student data, their lesson planning, their student learning objectives. I just think they'd be a real disadvantage. I know I'm going over my 3 minutes, and I appreciate it if you don't mind, because there's not many people are talking tonight. But they go home, teachers. Not that I want you to be here all night, I'll try to. But they look at assignments. We're using Google Classroom. They need to post assignments on Google Classroom. They need to look at assignments on Google Classroom. They need to then input students' grades on PowerSchool, an online classroom. They have to search for videos, primary source documents. They can search for lesson plans. They can search for professional development. Flipped classroom, I don't know how to do that. Let me go online and look at it. So I can tell you that at least where I work, teachers spend a good 5 to 10 hours per week at home on their laptops doing their work. Not all, but the most of them. So I think asking teachers to buy laptops if they want to have them in the classroom. I know we're making sessions to offer Chromebooks to them at a reasonable cost, $200, but Chromebooks are limited in what programs they can run. But I feel it's really unfair. I feel like we're not supporting our teachers by asking them to spend their money so that they can work from home. And I just think it's a good way to reduce productivity. So, you know, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know if you survey teachers and know how much time they spend on their laptops at home, but I could bet if they're spending 10 hours now and you take them away, that might shift, you know. And I just think it's kind of sad. I just think it's not supporting our teachers. And second, I ask you to consider your commitment to a one-to-one learning community and really think about what that looks like and what that entails. So I really feel in an effective one-to-one learning community, the more mobile teachers are, the better teachers they will be. I, in my classroom, you guys can be on OneNote or a Google Doc. I can take my laptop, I can walk over, I can pull up your document, I can look at what you're doing, I can have a conversation. A lot of schools are moving even beyond laptops into stuff like surfaces where they're inking devices. I could take a piece of student work, I could have it, I can pull it up on my device, we can edit it, projecting it on the board. And I can be in the back of the classroom looking at their screens. That's another thing. When you're in a one-to-one environment, we need to see student screens. We need to walk around seeing their screens. So if you tether me to a desktop in the front of the classroom, now I don't know what's going on. I suppose you could put all the computers in the back of the classroom, but to me it's just going against the whole principle of one-to-one. So I'm asking you to just please think about that. And then third, again, thank you for your time. I ask you to just come back to the importance of strategic planning and using a strategic plan to align our resources to that plan. So Dave's doing hard work with his team, and Sherry, I'm sure you're working on that. I just happen to speak to Dave because he's the one who spoke about it the last meeting. But you know, the tech plan should be part of your greater plan, your greater strategic plan. And I think that plan needs to be leading our fiscal decisions, whether it's a budget increase and saying, you know, it shouldn't be, we put forth a 0% budget increase. It should be, what's our strategic plan? Where do we want to go? Let's do zero-based budgeting, but what do we need to get there? Instead of strapping us in or strapping people into a 0%, which I know is well-intentioned. I'm not criticizing that, but it's just, I think in future decision-making, we need to make sure our strategic plan is really leading us, and that our resources and our decisions about resources are truly aligned to educational goals, values, and aligned to the learning of our teachers and the learning of our students. So thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Other public comment? Correspondence. I think everybody should have in their packet an email from Diane Wilson, an email from Carolyn Wilcox Gurley. And there's another one that was passed out, which I believe came from Senator Meyer.
Yes. And there's also a couple of thank you notes I'll pass around from the nurses for nurses.
And administrators reports. Let's just welcome the two of you back in good health, hopefully. Doing better than you were before you left. And let's start at this side for a change.
Well, first of all, thank you to Sherry and the Board of Education for supporting me the past couple of weeks. I've recovered so far faster than I thought, but as quickly as I hoped. Still have a long way to go, but definitely in much better shape right now than I was a few weeks ago in the last couple of months. Thank you for the plant. That is probably the only type of plant that I can keep alive. So that was a good idea. I want to thank the staff at the intermediate school, Lori Shuhai and Katie Sullivan, for taking a lot of the responsibility of the day-to-day role that the principal would handle, but also the teaching staff and support service staff, and Kim Shanks and Dawn Lorak, and now Dawn is injured, so Kim has really been carrying the mantle there. But again, thank you very much, and I look forward to being back full-time within the next few days. I did return today for a portion of the day. I'm also looking forward to presenting at the next board meeting the vision of the intermediate school. There are a lot of questions that I think that are out there that will be answered through the presentation. I was disappointed I couldn't do it a couple weeks ago. They just wouldn't clear me 3 hours after the surgery to come. So I look forward to that as well. We are just about finished with the Smarter Balance assessment. We have a few more makeups to take care of, but we'll wrap that up in plenty of time before the window closes. The staff made some adjustments where necessary, but overall we were pleased with the implementation of it. So that was a good thing. Field trips are in full swing. I'll report on those at the next meeting because we'll be wrapping up. Our 5th and 6th grade chorus and band went to the Crady's music festival last Friday, and then to Six Flags, and it was a very successful day. Bethany Franklin, who was hired to finish out the year before we open up the process again. I was excited for her being a first-year teacher, and special thanks to Julie Rooney and Allison O'Leary for stepping up as chaperones, along with the 17 or so parents that came. The students had a great day. And plans are, really rolling along toward the end of the year. I will reschedule the parent coffee with the principal that fell the day after. I didn't realize I'd be able to be out and get the surgery that soon. So we'll reschedule that, and it'll coincide with the June 5th meeting so I can make the presentation to staff, to you, and then to the parents in that order.
I'd also like to just say thank you so much for all the well wishes. Well, I've been out and recovering. I'm back a week and a half, and it feels like I haven't missed anything. Very busy at Litchfield Middle School. I hope you got my report, but if you didn't, I'll just highlight a few things. We're also finishing Smarter Balance testing. So far, so good. We'll have, just a couple makeups, but we should finish the big bulk of it this week. Our 8th graders are participating in the Next Generation Science Standards field test next Monday, where they get some results on their questions, and then they'll be in a real testing situation next year. Want to let you know that to mark your calendars, we have a Pops concert coming up on June 11th, which is always such a nice night. It's held in the gymnasium, and that's middle school and high school. It was so nice to come back last week to Teacher Appreciation Week. We did a ton of fun things all week, and I believe the teachers felt really appreciated, but it was a real community event. They had a breakfast one day, the boosters put on and parent donations funded this, a really nice catered lunch for all the teachers one day that fed them for the rest of the week. The student council students made personalized cards for all the students. I made a homemade thing for the teachers. And then we did a raffle, and this was also parent donations. So teachers got to pick raffle prizes on the last day. So it was a lot of fun and a lot of good well wishes to our teachers who work so hard all year for our students. And I can't believe we're talking about end of the year stuff already, but it is wrapping up. And I really wanted to highlight our last fun night, this past Friday. It was a perfect day outside. We had more than half of the middle school there outside playing capture the flag, chasing Mr. Harris all over the place, playing football, frisbee.
Was he the flag?
He almost won. That's how good he is. And he was a little sore on Saturday, he did report. But it was just such a fun, nice end of the year event for the students and staff and boosters to do one more fundraising event like that. And then we went Saturday morning for a bake sale, student council put together. And just a real good community feel to have so many people stop at our table to actually talk to the kids and have some nice back and forth. And the generosity of the community was outstanding, just really unbelievable. And our coffers were down to almost nothing because we put back $3,000 to offset field trip costs this year. And that $1,200 made in those two events will start us up in a really good spot next year. So it was just such a good feel, and I really wanted to highlight all that work from the Booster Club and Student Council, which is run by Jake Joya and Joshua Rose, two of our younger, newer teachers who have committed so much time to our kids. And I think that's it.
Quick question. So I know that the schools subsidize or pay for the field trips of the, for low-income students.
People need it.
People in need. Is that Booster Club money or is that budget money?
I budget for it.
So the Booster Club money that goes to help offset the field trips, that's just reducing the cost?
So we give us, 3 major field trips this year for middle school. Nature's classroom for 7th grade, the museum trip to New York City for 8th grade, and then the end of the year trip to Club Getaway for 8th grade. So we just put $1,000 towards each of the trips. So that comes off the total cost, which then reduces for every single student. If it was going to be $90 per kid, it went down to 88 or 85, whatever. That's how we do that.
I have a question, Mayor. Stephanie, as far as the 6th graders that are finishing up right now, would there be, I assume there's some kind of orientation for the students and the parents to really capture 100% or as many as we can to go to 7th grade?
Yes, actually, Mike and I have been in great work all year about changing some of the transition activities, and actually our 2 school counselors have done a lot of work too to take feedback from staff, students, how it's worked in the past. We've always done a ton of transition activities. This year, our kind of mantra was more in shorter doses. So instead of like spending a whole day at Litchfield Middle, we went up to introduce ourselves one day. The kids submitted questions when they come down for a visit. We're going to answer those questions. So lots of exposure in smaller doses.
That'd be great. I'd love to capture 100% if we can.
Yeah, I think we have really good rate of 6th to 7th grade.
Great.
Yep. Thank you.
And you received emails with Chris.
Chess, STEM activities, cave art, drumming, snap circus, wonderful activities for our children. Hoping that will kind of continue. And then our 3rd graders are wrapping up SBAC this week. And obviously it's the end of the year, so all attention is on end of the year activities and events and starting to think about next year. So it's busy.
Thank you. Good luck wrapping up.
Thank you.
David.
It's a busy time of year.
Yes.
We recently had a common vote, we adopted the budget, 33-0. We also had an ad hoc committee, I'm not going to speak about that, I'll let John talk about that, we had that on Monday. Goes fast. Thank you to Gail and Danny, we had a photo opportunity for our board for center school yesterday, so look for an article in tomorrow or Friday paper about that. So that's some good publicity about utility savings. The town, the Board of Selectmen approved a number of our capital items last night. I'm going to go through that list. Just so the board's familiar, they did approve the HVAC upgrade over at center school.
They did or did not?
They did. So we're very appreciative of that, even though it's a little over bid, or under, yeah. Intermediate school rubber stair treads, front door entrance door mechanism for the 88 high school. Was approved 44 replacement windows, LCS flooring replacement. We've been doing a number of classrooms each year. And LHS cafe roof replacement. And I just want to talk about that one just for a second, and we're very appreciative we're going to replace the cafe roof. This is underneath the solar panels last year where it leaked. We had a pretty severe storm yesterday. We were very fortunate. We didn't have a lot of damage here. But we did have some water damage in the band room, unfortunately, again. We had a fairly major leak. It was something that was requested in capital but not approved. It didn't come from the same spot. So I'm going to share some pictures just so the board can see exactly down what we're looking at. We had it in the process of drawing out. We'll be filing an insurance claim, or we did file an insurance claim today. But if the board recalls, in October, it was around mid-October, we had a pretty substantial leak. It was directed over to Public Works as a building, and it was recommended we put on capital. We did. It wasn't approved, even though there was a lot of things that were approved. We temporarily patched the leak that we had. This is in a different area that we haven't fully identified. I guess I need guidance from the board to add on what to do going forward. It's not something that we budgeted for in our operating budget. I'm guessing it's somewhere in the $20,000 range, all in. That is a new carpet that was soaked. That's what was replaced last fall. So it's something to ponder about how we want to approach this as a board.
Yeah, Dave, then John.
I happened to be in a walkthrough with Shirley and the principals this morning and happened to see that water dam. Where did it all come from?
So, this is the hypothesis right now, and I'm not an expert by any means. Before we used to have some leakage around the scupper where the drain is, and it was getting into there. What we think is happening is there was so much water yesterday it cooled and went over the flashing on the parapet wall and went down the wall itself. So the solution may be putting a cover over that parapet wall, or it may be another area in the roof that has a leak in it. So we don't know that. We're working on some temporary patches.
You're sure it's the roof and not a foundation problem?
It's not a foundation problem.
Okay.
It is definitely from the roof. There's some pictures there to show from the ceiling tiles and whatnot. But that's what we're working on right now. The insurance company will be out here in the next day or two and give us another opinion. I'm sure the insurance will not cover a roof because last time we had a roof leak, they said it was normal wear and tear. It's an older roof, so they wouldn't cover that, but they would cover the contents within the classroom. So we'll see how that progresses. But at some point, we do have to make a decision on how we want to fund whatever that is, because I don't think it makes sense to wait another year to go through capital. So we may need to return to the Board of Finance. I'm not sure, or Board of Ed may want to reallocate operational funds towards that and defund something else. So it's a good conversation to have. I just wanted to make everybody aware of it.
You said you started with Public Works. Oh, did I cut you? Go ahead.
My question would be, because this did come up in capital, and I think Raz had the question as for the last one, have we been making sure that those drains are clear and that there's nothing that's going to back up that might have caused that to happen?
That's a good question. We do that, and we did do that. So it wasn't a backup in the drain.
Okay.
So that is something that's part of our routine maintenance.
Right.
So that's not an issue.
So is it possible it's just, it's inadequately designed? In other words, we don't have enough downflow in that drain to handle which I'm assuming, I wasn't in Litchfield yesterday, but I'm assuming this was like a microburst, but, you know.
Had a lot of rain.
It was just a.
That roof is old.
No, actually, the roof it was replaced in '08. Not that old, I just was not it was not a high end roof, it was a lower
I
end.
mean, I understand that capital didn't improve it, but I just think that we should go get the selectmen, give us some money to fix the roof, because sooner or later, the insurance company's not gonna replace that rug every time it rains.
So you said you went to Public Works first, and,
In October of last year,
right, and they said go to Capital.
they said it's an operating thing, it's not a building thing. Remember, there was this conversation about what's building, what's operating, if it's maintenance or if it's building improvement.
So if you went back to them now and said, well, we did as you said, and we went to Capital, and Capital said no, are you willing to help them repair?
I did call the Public Works Director this morning, we had a nice, well, I didn't actually get a hold of him, but the message was relayed, and I feel like they would be supportive of a roof repair or replacement, but ultimately the question comes down to how is it going to get funded? So I think there's no confusion that we do need something repaired or replaced in that area, so it doesn't happen for a third time in a year. But how are we going to fund it? I mean, is that a Board of Ed operating budget funding, or is it, do we go back to the Board of Finance and ask for supplemental funding, or is it allocated through capital in some way, shape, or form, or something that may have come in under budget? I don't know the answer to that.
If you gotta do it within the next 6 months, obviously it's not a capital decision, because, you know, they're not gonna meet until the end of this calendar year anyway, so.
The DCS money.
But at the end of the day, is we replaced the rug, the insurance company paid it, what was it, $9,000 last time? 10,000?
More than that.
Okay, so we replaced it again for another 10, so that's when we have the roof fixed.
Don't, you saying don't replace the rug, you use the money to
No,
replace
no, I mean, you gotta replace the rug now, because it's damaged. I'm saying, you fixed it one time, it was 10,000, we gotta fix it again, it's $10,000. We could have the roof done for $20,000.
And the insurance company's gonna eventually say, listen,
We're
we're
done.
not gonna just keep on paying claims for that rug.
Well, it also impacts our premiums too, if we have enough claims.
I think go to the selectmen and tell them we want the money to fix the roof.
You go to Selectmen or Board of Finance?
Go to Board of Finance, same difference.
I think the first thing is you gotta talk to Raz and see what he's gonna be saying when you're having the conversation. Because if you got two people saying two different things, we got a problem.
Well,
Start there.
I did talk, I mean, I relayed the message of the chairman of the Board of Ed tonight. I don't think he's opposed to roof replacement. I think the question is going to come to what's the scope and how's it going to get funded?
Well, he was opposed last fall.
Was it? Okay.
Okay, I mean, at that time, he said, I think the problem was you didn't keep the drains clean, that's why we had the problem, and therefore, keep the drains clean, we won't have the problem.
And if that's what he said, that wasn't accurate at the time, because at the time last fall, it had to do with a leak around the drain, the rubber had cracked, it wasn't that the drains weren't clean. So if that was what was said, and I don't remember that conversation,
Right.
that's not an accurate statement, because we have done a good job keeping the drains clean.
Frank?
I understand what you're saying, John, but if the town of Litchfield wants us to do maintenance and we need a new roof, it's our decision if we need a new roof, not Raz's. If our people say, and our guys that look at the roof say we need a new roof, why do we need to go ask the Raz? He don't want the maintenance. They gave it to us. It's our responsibility to fix the roof. Not Raz, not Leo, it's our job to protect the kids and make sure the kids don't get wet and ruin the rugs. If that's the case, then have Leo take over and Raz take over the maintenance again and fix the roof.
I mean, the reason I say that is simply, this is, you know, a roof is by definition a capital item. It lasts more than 10 years, costs more than 10 grand. So, you know, somehow or another, we should be dealing with it that way. I think the first thing to do is to say, you know, go to Raz and say, you know, that here's an issue, we got to deal with it, and then at that point, get Raz's opinion, go talk to the selectmen and see what we do.
But again, why are we asking Raz's opinion? They gave the maintenance up.
I mean, so the question is, if Raz has no authority or control over the schools,
Why are we asking?
why are you asking for his approval?
Because I think they own the buildings.
They own it, but it's under school control until we turn it back. So ultimately, it's ours to make sure that we statutorily, we have to maintain them until we give them back.
When they put it in the first time for capital, the guy that does the roof said we need a new roof, but yet they said no, it was a drain. So I don't understand the purpose of it. It's gonna keep happening. Water's gonna find that crack no matter what you do up there. Sooner or later, it's gonna happen somewhere else until you place it. It's a flat roof that has stone on it, so you don't even know how bad the insulation is underneath it. That could be all be rotten too. Until you open that up, you could be here all day long with that roof, every time it rains.
Danny?
I'm sorry, Fran, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I agree with it, but I also agree with John says. I think we go back to Raz and say, listen, it happened again. What do you want us to do? And they say, hey, I don't care, it's your problem. Then we have a decision to make. But I'd rather have them tell us that it's our problem than to just say, well, screw you guys, you gotta give us $20,000 to fix the roof.
Because when you go to capital, and when you go to the Board of Finance, that's what they're going to say. They're going to say, what the town's saying, you know. So you might as well at least have made that step and take it from there.
Right.
I don't have a problem asking, you want to ask Raz, but you already said it didn't need to replace October. Here we are in May, and we had the same problem in less than 6 months. And Raz said we didn't need to be replaced. And it leaked again. You don't put a tarp over your house when a house leaks, does it? No, you fix it, put a new roof on. It's just gonna keep happening. They're gonna keep saying, wait, and then we're gonna be sitting here 3 more months, and it's gonna get wet again, we're gonna replace the roads.
I mean, Frank, I'm assuming what you would hope for is that the Board of Finance would say, oops, this is an emergency, not foreseen, we're going to allocate the money for that. And I think the way you grease the skids for that is by going through the process. I don't think this is something that has to happen in the next 7 days.
I would take a really fast track, find out when the next Board of Finance meeting is, ask to be added to the agenda. In the interim, I would get a roofer out here to take a look and give an opinion, and tell Raz when the roofer's coming and ask him to join. And then he can either support or not support, but you've gotten yourself on the Board of Finance agenda so you can address it, because capital's not going to help, and I don't want to take anything away from the programming for the kids in order to fix a road. That would be my recommendation.
I agree, it needs to be fixed, so they're not gonna give us the money, then, we can deal with them, but we need to fix this now, in the next 2 weeks. I mean, it sounds like we're just throwing money out there.
What did Raz ever call you back?
I didn't reach him today, but my understanding he's supportive of fixing the problem. I don't know what that means.
I just don't like them picking and choosing what they want to do and don't want to do.
I think it comes down to that question of maintenance versus building. Like, I understand the building is capital, and that's a position, but if capital isn't addressed, and I don't mean to say that negatively, they did a really nice job this year funding capital, but if long-term capital needs aren't addressed, where does the maintenance that those issues create fall? And then that, I think, falls under the Board of Ed's budget, so we divert funds towards those. If that makes sense. And I'm not saying anything negative about capital, because I thought capital did a really nice job this year funding as much as we asked for.
Well, point out the ECS funding when you look up.
Okay. What I can add this one, I think, too, and I was going to kind of briefly mention it. What Gail's talking about with ECS funding is there was a lot of conversations last year and this year when we were talking about the budget of ECS in towns like Litchfield, in theory, going to 0. That's the projection that we're going for. The reality is, it was a bump down this year and the last 2 years. But in the biennial budget, they actually increased ECS funding for Litchfield next year by $93,000. So that's funding that doesn't impact the Board of Ed's budget directly. It's money given by the state to the town to support local school initiatives. So it's that. And there is a nice presentation that Sherry made from CAPS that talked about ECS funding over time. And typically what will happen when they change their funding allocation, that money will potentially grow. So instead of this theory of maybe going to 0 for a town like us in the next 3 or 4 years, the reality is it looks like ECS may actually start to increase back up to the appropriate levels of what should be, because they've been underfunding ECS for a number of years. So they're trying to catch us up, and I don't mean us as Litchfield, us as schools. So I guess that's some positive news.
Do you need a motion on this, or you have guidance, you know what to do?
No, I got it, it's fine.
Okay. Anything else on your
No, that's it. Sorry, I don't mean to make it complicated.
No. Thank you. All right, we have a tuition student request that came in your packet.
Motion to accept it?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Teacher retirement for Michelle Mancho.
With regrets.
And I wish her well on her next venture. All in favor? And with sadness, administrative resignation.
Second.
With regrets.
All in favor? Committee assignment reorganization.
No, don't we gotta do this.
It's a different number.
Sorry.
Are we gonna skip that? We're gonna skip that for today?
I didn't know if you wanted to talk about the request made by the chair of CPP to change the format of those meetings, or if you wanted to wait until she was here.
Why don't you do it, Sherry?
Okay. Gail and I had met with Lynn a couple of weeks ago. She had some requests through for the CPP committee. One of them was changing the format or the structure of the committee meetings. Typically what happens, and many of you have been to those subcommittee meetings, we cycle through curriculum review, we get updates from faculty and administrators about how things are going, if there have been any revisions, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the curriculum, how are kids doing, what is the data showing. We'll talk about, are we comfortable with the materials and resources that have been provided, and are there anything more that we would need to help make this curriculum successful and help our kids achieve. Lynn's suggestion was to change the format of it and run meetings completely based on curriculum review. So she asked for, so a couple of weeks ahead of time, she would want the whole curriculum for each content area. We would go through each part of the curriculum, assessment, skills and content, and she felt that would be something that would be worthwhile for the committee to do, rather than conducting the subcommittee meetings as we have been in the past.
Pros and cons?
Why would the committee want to go through all that? We don't write curriculum. I'm not on the committee, so I'm just saying, I'm just asking.
Well, I'm on the committee, and I'm not so sure under what circumstances I could opine on the curriculum. You know what I'm saying? Like what do I have to say from what independent knowledge about it? You know, it's one thing if you want an outside source who's an independent expert to look at things, but I need to evaluate the whole curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to see how that what that looks like, because doesn't really pass. Go ahead.
Can I just suggest that maybe we want to table this to the next meeting where she's here and actually present her recommendation with the reason for it?
We can, although there's a meeting between now and then, so then if we do that.
No,
then
I'd just say stay with the old one until we can get a chance to have her say, why am I trying to do this, or what's the reason?
We can discuss it at the CPP meeting next week, or
Yes, next Wednesday.
I don't understand why you can't use the whole board, why can't you as chair just work with her on it, talk to her about it, but you the whole board decide that?
I can't remember, sorry, can you hear it?
Pursuant to policy, it looks
Oh.
like that requires board action for that.
Could you guys speak up now?
It's pursuant to policy, it looks like it would be, board action would be required to change that.
Is it a policy
I'd like to
issue?
hear from her.
I don't think it's a policy issue, I just think it requires board to.
Well,
Yeah, I know that guy.
you have to, subcommittees are regulated by bylaws of the board, so you need to make sure that that's really, the structure follows the bylaws, but it's also the board's decision as to what the purpose of every subcommittee is. And the information I received from CABE was that it's not one board member's decision to decide what the structure of a subcommittee should be. It should be up to the board, so.
Absolutely.
That'd be a long meeting.
And for that reason, no reason.
You gotta be here in a minute.
All right, so we'll keep it as it is for now, and we'll put it on a later agenda.
Quick question, if I may. Doesn't state statute kind of outline the requirement for a school district to have a curriculum committee and state a purpose for that committee?
It's in the our bylaws has what that.
But I think if I remember correctly, there's something that comes from state statute that says, boards of education must have a curricular committee for the purpose of blah, blah, blah. I'm just wondering if there might be some answers in the state documentation.
That'd be helpful to look at too. Thank you. Tuition waiver.
So moved.
Okay, and unless there are any questions in the interim, we did check the statute, and we are permitted to waive the tuition for the last 6 weeks of school. So,
I have a question too.
go ahead.
The tuition waiver, I initially confused the waiver with the request for tuition, and the request for tuition, which is the last name began with a T, yes?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I think what I'll do is I'll ask that question via an email, only because I recognize the name and I wanted to ask a question about it, but I won't put it out there here, probably more appropriate that I ask. But I'm following up on a program we put in place that I was
Right.
looking at that and saying, there's been some interest in that and wanted to follow up on that, but I'll shoot you an email.
I saw that one as well, but this one is, relates to hearts. And-
Yes, right, the one you're talking about now.
Right, and we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. And we have LCS principal position discussion. So the issue came up about whether to post for center school to hire a new administrator. And I raised the question about whether we wanted to look at hiring another full-time principal, whether we wanted to look at a reorganization of the schools and how the administrators work between the grades, and whether we want to hire someone as an aide replacement, or whether we want to get an interim and take the time to look at the structure. And so before we went and posted, I thought it was appropriate to bring to the board, for the board to discuss, sort of our vision going forward on that. So I put it out there in terms of, that's why it's on the agenda. This is how do we want to do things moving forward.
Well, me personally, I don't think that the school should be without an administrator right now.
Who would cover that?
Well, we have to discuss how to reorganize.
I mean, if you're considering reorganizing, that's not gonna happen next year. It's gonna take a year.
Right, in which case you could hire an interim instead of a full-time permanent employee.
And whatever, but I still think it's, you need somebody in that building.
Right, but I think you post it differently, right? If you're posting for an interim versus posting for a position. Ronnie?
If we have an interim, could it be somebody within our system?
Oh, interesting.
There are people qualified,
Yeah.
and they could do this for a year or whatever we need. There are certain people who could run that school. Because the superintendent is there to monitor it as usual, and it would save us probably a bit of money, because we probably would have to replace the person within the district, but it wouldn't be a same type of a salary and so forth. I think we should look at that and see if there's anybody within the district.
Why not do a quick study and get proposals from our, superintendent administration as to how they might meet the needs of the district, in terms of different options, if they think there are ways to do it different. I mean, you got a little time, you got summer, so it's not like you got.
Hold on one second, go ahead, Sharon.
No, I was just thinking that we would definitely, I think the decision or the vision that you all need to think about, I think before we move forward is, there has been talk of reducing the administrator, and is that the direction that you want to go? Because if it is, I think it moves you in different places. So if you decide that you do want to have one less administrator, and I think it's been put out there by the Board of Finance, a couple of board members have talked about it, we definitely would need to take next year to decide if we're going to reconfigure. I don't recommend not having a principal in a building on a daily basis. I could not support that. I think that if you think about reducing an administrator, we go back to the position of the dean of students at the high school, but if that position is eliminated, now you've essentially gotten rid of the middle school and you're back to a 7 through 12 model. So I think there's a lot to consider. When you have an interim, it can be difficult. They can't always move forward with initiatives, planning for doing continuous improvement, planning for district goals. I think it makes it harder when you have an interim to keep that forward momentum. And it's not anything against interim principals. I've worked with really good ones. I just think that it's sometimes difficult to do that. And I think, as I said, there's a lot to think about. If we are thinking about reducing an administrator and perhaps reconfiguring the grade levels in the buildings, I think there's a lot of options. I don't think that, I think going out and hiring the best possible person for the position at center school makes the most sense, because I don't see not having someone here at center school that's the best fit for center school. And I feel that about every building in the district, so.
I cut Matt off.
No, I was just thinking, is there a way to possibly have somebody already here, kind of serve as that role next year, possibly use the extra money to bring back one of the teachers, or teaching roles?
So you want
But then what do you do the following year?
I mean, take each year as it comes. I mean, we don't know, anything could change. There's changes in the Board of Finance right now that we're going through. I mean, anything could change. I'm just thinking, is it possible, if we did go that route, I'm just asking if we went that route, and had somebody already here that's kind of already in role serving, would it be possible then to save a little to bring back one?
Wayne?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I've worked through those situations once or twice where an interim came in, and usually what I've seen is most times when a new person comes in, they usually observe and make notes and kind of take in everything that the school's about and how things work for maybe the first year. And then the second year, they start to make some changes and reconfigurations and things like that. But when you do an interim, you kind of get that with the interim, where they're kind of going to stay status quo for the year that the interim's there. And then if you do bring somebody in, then they're probably going to sit tight for a year and take inventory of what the building is and how it works and all that. So one of the drawbacks of that kind of arrangement is you're kind of putting center school, in the icebox for 2 years.
2 years,
Which I don't know if that's what you want to do.
Don?
I think Sherry made a good point about hiring a very qualified person, because we sit here and say, reduce one administrator, but frankly, I think it's more than reducing an administrator. The biggest part of the solution is what effect does it have on the students? Not to reduce somebody to save bucks. It's what is the effect on the students? And it's not worth saving a few bucks if you're going to hurt a few kids. So I think it's going to take a long time to make that decision. I think it's important we study it. But while we're studying it, as someone just mentioned, it's going to be 2 years, and let's bring the best in center school.
I agree with Don.
I was gonna say something else. I say hire principal, let Sherry work on reconfiguration, because we don't even know if it's gonna work yet, or how it's gonna work. See how it goes, how it flows, if we'll cross that bridge next year when we get there. If we could even do it, but I just hire the best one you can now and move on. I don't believe we can't have no principal in the building, yes, I don't think that's right, for the kids or the staff. That's my opinion.
So then, is the board then wanting to authorize Sherry to go ahead and post?
I'd like to make a motion to authorize Sherry to list for a new principal at center school.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, motion carries. We'll need to set up a committee, and we'll need a hiring committee, and we're gonna need to set a salary range.
That's contract.
That's contract?
That's contract.
Yeah. How does the committee work? Do you assign it, or Sherry, or do we? Sorry.
Call Gail and say, I want to do it.
No, for parents and stuff, how do you take names, or?
I don't know whether do we always have parents on the hiring?
Class for them.
We did for the intermediate school. So I think the best thing for you to do as board members is to, if you are interested in being on that committee, to let me or Gail know.
What the parents?
And then I'll take care of that part. I'll reach out to staff at center school, and I'll reach out to the parent committee like I did last year.
Excellent.
Do the old confidentiality thing that's going in and all that stuff.
Yes.
You said staff too, right?
Yes, please come
You
in.
said staff?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right, and now superintendent's report.
I did send this out to you all the other day. I have some copies if you didn't have them. Our map testing results should have gone out today. Every principal, we got parent letters done and results done, so parents should be receiving those results in the next couple of days. Administrators and I have been talking about those comparisons between the fall administration and the spring administration. We continue to have those discussions, and building principals are talking to their staff about that as well. And as soon as parents have their student information, we will again put that information on the district data dashboard. Our last collaboration meeting of the school year with Greenwoods and the Prevention Council was last Friday. We talked about all the accomplishments of the group, started brainstorming for next year. They had some very successful parent workshops. They had done a needs assessment early in the year to see what parents were interested in. We had a successful, as you know, viewing of screenagers, and we continued that discussion at our meeting Friday and talked about parent interest in that, and there was a forum and a discussion. We also included Region 6 in our collaboration meetings in that Prevention Council and Greenwoods group, and that will continue next year. And we have a date in July that we're going to meet again to talk about some ideas moving forward for next year. For communication, I again talked about MAP. We'll put that in the district data dashboard. I think in my last superintendent's report, I talked about the last newsletter of the year that will go out the first week of June. And again, David talked about the town budget being passed, 30 people nothing. board for their support, the staff, parents, and the community members throughout the process. So thank you for that support.
Yes, sir.
Any question?
Yeah.
Are we still on track, Sherry, for the audit? Yes, with the correct.
Yes, they are coming in June 11th.
Thank you.
So now we got a $10,000 or $20,000 roof leak done.
That probably won't hit until next fiscal year, we only got 6 weeks left.
We have to leave the board on.
Here's all cookies.
Okay, so,
Thanks, Ed.
committees. Starting down at that end, let's work your way along. So who do we have first there? Wayne?
Oh, we did not meet since the last.
Frank?
We didn't meet John Lewis up.
But I'm trying.
We're gonna try to meet again before the next board meeting because Matt's gonna close off that meeting. So
No, I'll give you 3 weeks' notice though, so I'll look at you.
So we haven't met, so we're gonna meet probably before the board meeting on the 6th, I think.
Thank you.
Okay, and did, CEP meet?
No, we didn't.
No, all right, Dave, to you?
Yeah, by the way, our regular meeting will be tomorrow as well. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to, I meant to hold back on my enthusiasm.
It's the best committee.
In your packet, you have policy 9221.
Wait, you going in order?
Oh, okay, I'll go in order.
9310,
Well, actually, how does that read in order? 92,
you gotta look
Just
at
to
your,
review.
I know. Okay. All right, 9310. Periodic review of policies and bylaws. To be reviewed, reviewing the review. Okay, we're going to put that down. All right, and the next one is first reading of filling vacancies, 9221. Just a small change, couple small changes in that. You can take a look at it and we can go forward with it next time if you want.
can I make some suggestions?
You sure
And
can.
and I have questions. Is it any vacancy of the board or on the board?
A vacancy, the board would have a vacancy. So it's of the board, it's possessive.
So, just for clarity, such vacancies will be formally announced to the board at one of its regularly scheduled meetings, period. No action will be taken to fill the vacancy until the next regularly scheduled meeting, period.
Okay.
The board will fill vacancies with special attention paid to the small s statutes relating to minority representation of boards and to party representation. And I'm not sure what you mean by within the election cycle in which the recently retired board member was elected, period.
Well, the vacancy is filled up until the time that the election takes place again.
And party so what's party, so party representation,
Well, the political party.
right. So maybe there's a comma there with special attention paid to the statutes relating to minority representation of boards and to party representation.
Okay, let's go back over it.
Yeah,
Okay. All right, so we'll scratch out and no action will be taken. Since the board will fill vacancies with special attention, oh, okay. What was your recommendation on that sentence?
well, I was starting it with the board
Okay.
and ending it with a period after the word elected. But, and statutes is a small s, but my question is, so you're gonna pay special attention to the minority representation and to party representation, right? Does that get a comma maybe to separate it out? And then to indicate within the election cycle in which the recently retired board member was elected? I'm just sort of, it's,
Do you want us to take this back?
yeah.
Okay. All right, we will take this back and go over it. We'll just take your suggestions and, yes,
Can I make one other suggestion?
please go ahead.
Such vacancy will be formally announced to the board. Not at one of its, it should be at the meeting right after that first.
At the next
The next
regularly
regular
scheduled
meeting after the retirement or resignation. of that board member.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take that back to the committee.
Sorry.
We can talk about that tomorrow, Dave.
Hey, well, we've already got a pretty good, but we can,
Okay.
okay. All right, the next one, cell phone, number 5131.81A.
The second reading, so someone needs to make a motion to accept it as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay. The last one, second reading, the limits of authority. We'll need a motion to.
So moved. Matt?
A second.
Okay.
No, wait for someone else to participate.
Okay. You're gonna call the question?
Yes, when you're ready.
Go ahead.
Okay, just a couple comments here. I looked through this, and I think I get the gist of it in terms of current situations or previous situations and some of the verbiage here. But this is a policy that speaks to the limits of the board members' authority, but I feel that it crosses over into trying to regulate board member behavior. And in some instances, I wonder a little bit about its effect on freedom of speech. I think if some of these things you want to incorporate to try to encourage board members to conduct themselves in a certain way, I would do it through the ethics policy or the board members' responsibility policies, as opposed to, we got one part where we're talking about, no board, the previous policy, which I like, said no board of education members shall be asked to do any clerical duties or anything like that. And it's now become board members may not perform any investigative or routine or other duties, etc. So, I think I'm not comfortable with it. I like the previous policy. I think this is something that I would look to weave into the ethics policy or board member responsibility policy as opposed to limits of board authority.
Well, I think the reason we went as far as we did is that board members per se are not really in a position to investigate except through the committee that they serve on. A committee can request information for investigation, but a board member would have to work through a committee.
Yeah, I don't even understand why we're talking about performing investigations. Again, it looks like there's some issues of concern. We've plugged them in here to address them. And I don't think that's, to me, what I would want to see in the policy. No board member shall solicit information from the public. Solicit means ask. As a board member, if I want to ask a member of the public a question, I think I have every right in the world to ask it. I don't want to approve a policy that tells me I can't. Should board members be cautious about...
Wait a minute. We're talking about soliciting information regarding performance, behavior, or competence of an employee.
Well, again, I don't think that you can stipulate what a person can ask about or have a conversation about with anybody out there.
Should we run the policy past Fred and make sure that he says and see what he has to say about whether whether we're exceeding our authority on what we're putting in here?
I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that I don't know if you want to leave it in to this or maybe, put it in on some of the, and again, we know what the deal is with the ethics policy.
We
It's
did
really.
back and forth about that.
Right, because what we're governed by is the town of Litchfield ethics policy. Having one of our own is great, but there's nothing that you can do about it if somebody doesn't follow it on the board level. Just like here, if somebody doesn't abide by this, what's going to happen? Which is kind of one of the weak spots of our system. There's really no way to
What
hold
we're offering
anybody
is
accountable.
guidelines, and we're stating these guidelines in a very affirmative manner. The But that doesn't mean that we necessarily have to have hard and fast consequences attached to them. It's just, this is a policy that we are, in an agreeable way, trying to have people abide by in the best spirit of cooperation and working together, not in a judicial one, saying that we're going to make a deal with you. If you abrogate this policy, we're going to punish you. We don't have that kind of power, nor do we want that kind of understanding in a working relationship. That's, I think, the way we went about this.
Well, again, I look at talking about soliciting information. I don't know if that's an authority issue or a behavioral issue or a conduct issue, which is why I raised the question. I mean, again, it's okay, we don't have to agree, but that's how I feel about it.
So do you want to do it?
I have a question.
Is there anything in state statute that says the board member cannot act for the board as an individual?
Yes, I believe so.
All right.
And in our policy.
There's something, isn't there something in here that, wouldn't that cover some of this? I mean, I'm very confused about some of this.
Really confused about it.
Yeah, but we're making a lot of changes that I don't quite see why they're necessary.
Why not?
They provide guidance.
Well, we obviously got some different opinions. Call a question, let's vote on it. Or send it back for review or ask for it.
Well, here's the question.
It costs us money.
If Fred says it's okay, does it change your vote on it? Because if Fred says it's okay and it doesn't change your vote on it, then there's no reason to spend the money and pay Fred to look at it.
Well, I guess by virtue of the fact that the board can suspend its policies whenever they want to, I don't know what kind of light that casts on the whole policy book, but I mean, to me, and again, I get what you're looking at, and I understand how you're trying to manage, problems per se, but I mean, I'm not going to try to govern the board by saying you can't ask this type of question or that type of question. I think that's a freedom of speech thing. And I think what you're doing is you're restricting the flow of information through board members or from board members to try to avoid issues. And I understand why you want to avoid the issues, but I don't support trying to restrict the ability of the board member to ask a question.
So you can listen to anything any member of the public brings to you as it's written. But because we do not supervise our employees, the only person in the district that we supervise is the superintendent. There's no legitimate reason for a board member to be out there seeking to solicit information regarding the competence of an employee. And it's very clear that that's not what we do. So to put that in an explicit way in policy, I think makes sense. Because then if your limit of authority is that you can't do that you don't do that it's not part of your job responsibility and you can't act on your own, then maybe we can avoid some issues because it's clear what you can and can't do. And you can always listen and you can always tell Sherry if somebody brings something to your attention because it's ultimately her job to do the supervision.
But it's a role conflict issue. I mean, as a citizen, you can probably ask anybody anything you want. But once you assume the role as a...
Okay, Don, say it. What you always said. Becoming a board member in no way infringes on your rights as a citizen.
Well, that sounds nice in theory, but it's not true.
Okay, well, we'll look up state statute. Let's call the question, because I'm tired of talking.
I don't favor spending money in a legal way to do this stuff. I think the board should hash it out and vote on it, and whatever the board decides will be our policy.
Can I just ask one question, because I don't understand this thing about apprising the superintendent of politically sensitive issues. What's the concept there?
It was just adding the fact that if something does come up that has been told to us and that is sensitive, if it's in regard to the functioning of the board of the district, we really have an obligation to not hold on to some secret information or a secret agenda.
But to share it with the superintendent, so
Yes.
she can manage the schools.
Yeah, okay, I mean, they tend to be, they're not necessarily open meetings, but if you're at a political town committee meeting, not everything that's said in there is an open meeting, and I'm not sure that I want a responsibility to communicate something that is or isn't public.
I might even change those words from politically sensitive issues, but having a responsibility to apprise the superintendent of issues which will impact the schools.
I'm okay with that.
I'm going, I'll do that.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah.
So
No, I know.
as amended, so we have do we have a first and a second on this?
So moved.
Okay, so.
Can you vote if you amend it? Make it, or do you have to
I
call
believe,
that a first reading and then have a second reading amended as amended? I don't remember, which is why I'm asking the question.
I think we've always just voted on
You can amend them and vote
I
on
don't
the
know, I
fly.
did a, I
it.
can't.
Joanne's shaking her head.
Yes.
That's how we've always done
So
it.
what was it?
On
Well,
policy.
usually you made the motion and somebody seconded it and you talked about it and amended it. And then voted.
But if we're amending, my question is if we're amending, you have a first reading and then the board's like, okay with it, goes to the second reading and then it becomes policy. My question is if you physically change wording, does that go back to being a first reading? And not
We just did it with the cell phone policy, which had changes in it, and we voted on it.
Was the second reading,
This is the second
This is the
reading,
second
too.
reading.
It's the same
but you
thing.
didn't change anything with the cell phone policy, you changed something with the one that's up before it.
No, there were changes in the cell phone policy on it. There's
Tonight?
No, he's talking about impromptu changes.
Oh,
Okay.
I think we've always done it. I mean,
I don't remember.
but I would point out it should be no member of the board, I think.
Member of the board?
Yeah, the second.
Yep.
And
You're
there
gonna
should,
have-
I don't think there should be a comma after the word superintendent, and no paragraph above it, less than.
All right, would it make everybody feel better if we just took it back and made changes that have been recommended tonight and then bring it back the next meeting? Would that feel more suitable?
Well, I just vote, so I don't know if
I would have a better view. We're just going to,
I think we should put it back, because I want to see a parent clause, I want to make sure I can still be a parent, because right here it's saying, because you're right, I know we've said it, you don't take lose your rights as a parent, but what if you're investigating something as a parent, a kid's bullied or briefing?
Let's take it back.
Yeah, just a sentence
Let's
that
take
kind
it
of
back.
addresses Wayne's concern, I want to
Discuss it
address Wayne's concern.
Sure, okay.
And I think at least that one or those two sentences that are entirely in red should go by Fred.
Should what?
Go by Fred.
Go by Fred.
The two sentences there in the middle that are exclusively in red, I would put that by Fred. I mean, normally Fred says the board of ed can kind of do whatever it wants, but, unless somebody complains, but, well,
We'll take another look at it.
thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay, John?
Okay, so we met with the Region 6 Long-Term Planning Committee on Monday night. There was a lot of discussion on, I guess David had met with, and I guess Sherry, a lot of discussion about comparing the two health plans. And it sounds like trying to bring them into our health plan and vice versa would be a lot of heavy lifting and not necessarily as easy to do as one thinks. I think it's probably good we spent the time doing it because if we ever do go to some kind of combination, it is something that we would have to look at if you know the first things. But it does not look like something that would necessarily pay money to us, save us money in the near term. So, we reviewed the sharing of classes. As it stands right now, there are 10 students combined, and 2 schools combined, that will be attending class at the other school. And that, having said that, it sounds like switching takes place right up until the first day of class or maybe even the first week of class. So we'll see what happens. I think that there was a feeling that the 2 administrations had actually done quite a lot of work in terms of coordinating the schedules, coordinating classes, figuring out what they would have to do so that next year, the mobile classes that would be offered would be actually shown in the Litchfield handbook and vice versa. So it would make signing up for classes for the 1920 the year after this year would be a much easier program. David reported that he is close with a draft memo of understanding between Litchfield and Region 6, which I think you were saying the end of this week.
Yeah, we're hopeful. I mean, we have a tentative draft. We're putting a little bit of a. You have a copy of it?
I do, and I can share it with the board if you want.
It's fine. We're adding a little bit of language for discipline, IEPs, and 504s, just to add clarification. But in principle, we have an understanding that it'll probably work just fine.
So
more importantly, this would be something that would go to, assuming that we were there, it would go to the Region 6 board meeting on the 4th of June and go to our board meeting on the 6th of June to be formally okay. And so we would have a chance to look at it before we before it automatically goes into effect. At that time, if we both ratify that, that's when all of this discussions back and forth would be finalized and the classes would be formally set up. And I think at that point, the discussion would be to have a joint announcement, maybe the Litchfield News or other things that talks about the opportunities, excuse me, and what we're doing in terms of the cooperation program with Momo. And then I think the other thing that we talked about was, okay, assuming that all goes together, what's the next phase for the 2 boards? How do we want to proceed? Do we want to talk about some kind of combination of the 2 school systems? And I think we both felt it was time that the committees come back to the full boards. And I don't know whether we began this discussion in a retreat or whatever, but a full discussion among all 9 of us about what are the next steps forward and how are we going forward. I believe it was.
Yeah, it can't be in the retreat. It's not executives.
Okay. But I know that, I believe that this actually was voted on 3 years ago, that this board voted to say, yes, we want to do that.
I don't even remember how long. Was it 3 years ago?
That was the last time this kind of came up, I think.
Yeah. When did we vote on the regional association?
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
It was 2 years ago, sorry. But I think, there's been a lot of water over the dam since then. We talked about this, and I think we should have that discussion before going forward.
Put it on the agenda sometime in the summer.
Sure. John, there were a couple classes I think that we were excited about. Was one of them 4th year French? 4th year Spanish?
We've got there are a couple of Latin classes.
They're coming here for Latin.
Yeah.
Spanish was offered, but it didn't work out in the schedule. There's a college.
We just have 2 going for AP psychology. So we have 2 going for AP psychology, and we have 8 coming to us.
But that may change.
And there were also 2 classes at Womogo, and one was a UConn economics course, and I can't remember what the other one was, that will be sort of reposted to make it available the Litchfield case to take it.
And if I'm not mistaken, we had a conversation about a possible joint meeting between the two boards with that facility.
Yes, and that was the other thing that we would be doing, we'd be trying to get the combined boards together.
So that's what's going on. There are no other committees, right? You're ad hoc, once you're ad hoc, gonna start doing it.
We haven't set that day yet.
You do that.
But we'll meet.
Is that your job? I think that's it. Need a motion to move to executive session?
So moved.
Have a good evening.